Welcome back, my gorgeous, good-looking friends. We're continuing on with the Harry and Meghan clown show, finishing up episode 4, critical review. As I mentioned in the first part of my review for episode 4, Harry takes after his mother, and being that he has seen what goes on behind the curtains, he knows how to use those same tactics in retaliating against his brother and father because he did not get what he wants and he's bitterly jealous.
I have 30 years experience of looking behind the curtain and seeing how this system works and how it runs.
We've heard Harry say in this series that he didn't have many memories of his mother. So the question is, did he really know her, or did he only know what he saw of her from the media? My guess, it's the latter. Not only did Harry and Meghan take the easy way out, but Liz Garbus also took the easy way out by using Diana's plight as the foundation for what this series is about. What's even worse is that Harry is using that Diana interview as his blueprint to manipulating the family and also retaliating against them by throwing every plight that Diana had said in that interview back into his own story. Liz Garbus and Netflix are ethically wrong to have aired not only the BBC interview, but to allow Harry to continue telling the lie that Diana died because it was a result of paparazzi chasing her, which is not the case. It was because she was in a car with a drunk driver and she didn't have her seatbelt on. If you take away the narrative of the media hounding his mother, then what story does he really have now? Also, to add about this series was including snippets of the BBC interview, which the copy that they were using was pretty clean, as opposed to the rare bootleg copies that are out there online. So the question is, where did Netflix get this footage? BBC didn't give it to them, nor did BBC give permission for Netflix to use it. My guess is that it was either Harry or Meghan's copy that was given to them. And what's really noticeable is that you can actually map the specific issues that they raise in this series to the Diana interview, specific parts of it. Let me show you some examples. So Harry explains how the royal communications offices work with one another and how they feed information to the media.
Constant briefings about other members of the family, about favors inviting the press in. It's a dirty game.
Now, what they did here in this manipulative storytelling, right before Harry explains how the palace swapped stories with one another to damage people's reputation, they played Diana's interview about how jealous the royal family was and gave the example of the Australia trip. And then they weave in Meghan's narrative about how she was being praised for the work that she was doing and was getting too much positive press, overshadowing the other royals on the front pages. So both Harry and Meghan then imply that because they were so popular and were casting a shadow over the other royals and their work.
And on the front page of the Telegraph, Meghan.
I went, oh my God.
She was like, but it's not my fault. And I said, I know. And my mum felt the same way.
And right after Harry says that, they insert the Diana BBC interview where Martin Bashir asks Diana if she was flattered by the media attention particularly. And you hear Diana say, no, not particularly, because with the media attention came a lot of jealousy. A great deal of complicated situations arose because of that. Thus, planting the seed for when he then explains how the media offices work and then insinuates that this is what went on, the backstabbing, the implications, the trying to destroy Meghan. And then after that, you see a flash of various news articles that were denouncing Meghan's bad behavior, but they're seeing it as the royal family were just planting stories to get at her and attack her. So she looks bad while the other royals look more favorable.
So if the comms team want to be able to remove a negative story about their principal,
Meghan being a diva, he's actually pointing fingers at the communications team for sharing some of those details, let's say. He's not denying that they're not true, but sharing those details in order to damage Meghan's reputation. But here's the thing. She did those things. And He's angry that he was exposed for it. So what is he going to do? He's going to blame it on the comms team for leaking information that they thought they should have been protected from. So they're okay with bullying people. They just don't want the rest of the world to know.
You know, there's leaking, but there's also planting of stories.
This is an important detail that we need to pay attention to. William and Harry both shared the same comms person, which was Jason Knopf. But remember, secretly, Meghan didn't get rid of her full-on Hollywood team and was working with Sunshine Sachs. So who do you think are behind those stories of William's alleged affair? My money this time is not on Meghan.
So the officers end up working against each other. It's a kind of a...
And that tells you right there that he's guilty of doing it. But he wants you to think it is them and not him. At this point, their credibility is shot out the window. They have lied so many times. They have schemed so many times. And this would be no different. And what he says next justifies to himself and his conscience that his behavior is acceptable.
This weird understanding or acceptance that happens. And you can always say, I didn't know about this, or don't be ridiculous, this would never happen. I would never get you suggesting that I condone this. It's like, no.
And there he's pretty much implying that he's asking the palace to lie on his behalf. And if they're not willing to lie, then at least try and stop the negative articles from being published.
But what I am asking is, have you done anything to stop it? And the answer is no.
And the reason why I can come to this conclusion is because it's very detailed in Valentine Lowe's book, Courtiers. The book talked about how Harry was so neurotic about anything negative that would come out about him in the press, even way before Meghan showed up.
William and I both saw what happened in our dad's office.
So then Harry leads into setting up his brother now as the enemy.
And we made an agreement that we would never let that happen to our office.
And this story, my friends, is coming straight out of the Diana BBC playbook. So Diana, in her interview, does accuse Charles's department of trying to sabotage her with all the paparazzi and the press and the media. And she says, you know, the campaign at that point was being successful, meaning Charles's hit attack. But it did surprise the people who were causing the grief. It did surprise them when I took myself out of the game. So Diana sort of disappeared for a little bit, but she still did her work underground. And it begins to say that they hadn't expected that. And I'm a great believer that you should always confuse the enemy. The question is, who was the enemy? Well, the enemy was my husband's department because I always got more publicity. My work was discussed much more than him. What I see now, metaphorically, is that Harry is Diana 2.0, and Prince William is really actually Prince Charles. Well, really he is the Prince of Wales. Separation from the monarchy is very similar to separation in a marriage. You see, Harry does want history to repeat itself because that is how he is going to benefit and profit. Clearly, he's doing everything he can right now to align himself or be parallel to the same events and experiences that Diana had. The Sussex brand is all about monetizing pain and trauma from the past. That's all they have been doing. I think the strategy is to keep pushing to a point where he is putting pressure in the media for Charles then to strip the titles. Harry knows that this Diana narrative is going to get tapped out, so they need to create a new victimhood narrative. So if Charles strips them of the titles, then all of a sudden now you have a re-injection of more things to be a victim of. And Harry is using Meghan as the excuse to push this racism narrative that is now going to open up Pandora's box should they get stripped of their titles. I can see the headlines now. Family wants Meghan to end up like Diana. All of this is part of the manipulation to get what he wants, which is 1, his IPP status back, 2, people paying for security, 3, other ways to grift and make money off of it by exploiting God knows what else. And as I look at this differently, do I believe that Harry would go along with a plan to where the children that he has are not necessarily born of the body and the many lies wrapped around those children? Absolutely. I believe that he is along with this charade, and at least one of those children came from a surrogate, if not both of them, which is what I believe is the case. There's a reason why there is an embargo on talking about those children in the UK. There's also a reason as to why Archie's birth certificate has been sealed after the fact the Harkles had released that there had been changes on it. I am particularly glad that finally Tom Bower was not afraid and he said what he had to say surrounding those kids.
We know that they deceived the public about the birth data and time of the whole event.
Now, I want you to watch Harry's face when, after he gets done saying about how much they did in Australia and it went off so well, that Meghan chimes in and mentions her pregnancy. You can see that he is going along with whatever shenanigans and cover-up that they have been playing.
I mean, looking back on it now, amazed we managed to do what we did.
Well, also even harder when I was pregnant.
I'm slowing this down for you to see this reaction. He knows he's guilty of something. And there he's got his lips pursed together and that Duper's delight smile that they conned everybody. Meghan gives herself away as she can't look the interviewer in the eye, and then she rapidly blinks before fixating her stare in an attempt to convince the interviewer what she's saying is true. She also has the Duper's delight smile. This is Ted Bundy sociopath behavior. Now, this leads into the major deception and story that they tell around the pregnancy as well as the birth of their children. The first image that they show is a picture of a sonogram. Now, they want the viewer to assume that this sonogram is theirs, but we don't know that because there's no identification on it. We're just there to assume that it's supposed to be Archie. So next, they show us a color picture, but they don't show Meghan's face. Do we know if it's her or not? Who knows? Maybe, maybe not.
We started journaling right when we found out we were pregnant.
Now watch Harry's face as Meghan tells another story.
It's just, dear baby.
I don't know about you, but if you're hearing a fond story or memory about your child, you would at least either agree or show a little bit of warmth or smiling. It's your child.
We're so excited to meet you one day and take little snapshots and stick them in the journal. Here's an announcement that went out about you today.
Guys, this looks like one of Soho House's photo booths. The reason why this was an important fact is because they were seen drinking and partying at the Amsterdam Soho House literally less than a month before they announced their pregnancy. So it's very possible that they staged this photo feeling goofy and just pretending.
Announcement that went out about you today.
Again, as she's telling the story about her baby, look at Harry's face. He doesn't look happy. He doesn't look like he's interested.
We announced we were pregnant. We were in Australia on a
we
tour.
Had to. You were starting to show already.
Yep.
You were starting to show already.
Touching your nose is a sign of lying.
Yeah. And then New Zealand started referring to it as the bump.
As the bump.
Le bump.
Le bump, yeah.
Harry has a tendency for when he lies, he always looks into Meghan to tell the lie instead of having to look directly at whoever he's talking to. He did that in the Oprah interview as well as the engagement interview.
Neither of us did that. We both said that, even though we knew that it would be.
Yeah, I tried to warn you as much as possible.
No, he didn't. Harry is to some degree at fault for not helping Meghan a little bit more, at least in the early days when he was about to meet the Queen with her. You would think that he would have prepared her, but not in the car and saying, okay, now you have to curtsy. Shame on him for not doing that.
Schedule.
That was a really rigorous tour to do. Pregnant.
Of which you complained that you weren't getting paid for what you were doing, and you also skipped out because your friend Jessica was down there hanging out with you. At this point, they're showing and talking about how successful the Australia tour was. And you hear sound bites of hearing that Meghan was a rock star and they were becoming more popular with the younger generation. The world didn't know that Meghan was a bully at that point, but leaks were coming back from the trip about Meghan's antics and how she made one aide cry. Also, her security detail ended up quitting when she came back. Of course, they don't mention anything of that. No accountability. Instead, they throw the accountability onto the fact that the family was jealous.
When someone who's marrying in, who should be a supporting act, is then stealing the limelight or is doing the job better than the person who was born to do.
Prince William and King Charles need to take this seriously. If you're listening closely to Harry's words, he's actually saying that he and the concubine can do a much better job than the family. So in defense of Meghan's bad behavior, of course, what do? They pull out the race card again.
Openly racist. That wouldn't be civilized and that wouldn't be British. But it's perfectly fine to kind of dog whistle, give a nod to. He's making people cry, this kind of angry black woman trope.
And there was a group of women, and one of them said to me, "What you're doing to your father's not right." It was the first time that I went, oh my God, people actually believe this stuff. And then my entire center was rocked to its core.
Maybe during this process, Harry realized how crazy this woman is. Meghan was rocked to the core because she was exposed for being a liar and a fraud.
But what they were doing to her and the effect that it was having on her.
Excuse me, pain and suffering? What have they been doing to Thomas Markle and Samantha Markle with their whole PR machine, attacking them to a point where physically both of them have been impacted? It's so disgusting. He can actually sit there and spew out and defend this vile woman who has caused so much pain, not only to her own family, but to his grandfather and grandmother, accelerating both their deaths.
Like, enough of the pain, enough of the suffering.
Yes, Henry, enough. We are so over the malicious behavior that you and your wife feel you're so entitled to and have no consequences for. Many people are getting exhausted mentally from hearing this toxic negativity all the time from this couple. Like it's becoming a humanitarian crisis. You know, and the way to really drive this point home, the next clip, of course, we're just throwing in a little bit of Diana.
Back in the day, my mum was in the back of the car going to engagements in floods of tears. And then my dad saying, "We're almost there."
Immediately when he told this story, I went directly back to the Oprah interview to when they were talking about Cirque du Soleil. Exactly what he just described is exactly what they played out on the Oprah interview.
30 seconds to wipe the tears away, slap on some makeup, and then the door opens and smile, everything's fine.
We are smiling and doing our job, but we're both just trying to hold on. And every time that those lights went down in that royal...
And flash, 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 flash.
Maybe the next book Harry should write is called The Diana Victimhood Playbook. Harry's mother would be appalled. But let's think about this. Do we honestly think Harry cares? I don't think so. And of course, playing off of Diana's suffering and mental challenges, we now have to segue into Meghan's plight with her mental state.
All of this will stop if I'm not here.
It angers me to see her crying wolf right now because she is lying. Because the next thing she says, she can't look at the interviewer in the eye, but she's fluttering her eyes like crazy.
And that was the scariest thing about it. Is it was such clear thinking.
Did you guys see that? She says this, and instead of shaking her head up and down as in yes, she's negating what she's saying by shaking her head no. And then she takes a big swallow with her throat. This woman is lying. At the time she was telling this story, many people said, well, where was her mother? Her mother is a social worker. She's not a mental health specialist. Was a social worker.
Just picking away at her spirit, that she would actually think of not wanting to be here.
I don't buy Doria's story because after she said that, that would have triggered any mother, really, to start crying after hearing that about their child and reliving that moment. It takes Doria a while to get to that place, and then there is an edit to showing her with some tissue and wiping her eyes, but there's no tears coming out.
That's not an easy one for a mom to hear. You know,
And this segues to Harry in him trying to redeem himself because he didn't help her, and many people had questioned why he didn't help her, considering he had so many resources and was in therapy himself.
I didn't deal with it particularly well. I dealt with it as institutional Harry as opposed to husband Harry.
Of course, blame it on the institution. Who would think that he would ever take accountability for his own actions and selfishness. Seriously, stop wasting people's time. No one is taking this serious now because of the lies.
I wanted to go somewhere to get help, but I wasn't allowed to.
It's lie upon lie upon lie.
But this was different. It was really different. But actually, if you strip all that away and say, okay, fine, it was exactly the same. So do we still believe that she should have just sucked it up like other members of the family?
So here's why their story doesn't jive. So Meghan just said that she was not allowed to go anywhere. And then they cut to Harry, and Harry is talking about the institution saying she just needs to suck it up, almost indicating that nobody is willing to help her. But you would think Harry would say, well, can't we have somebody come to our cottage so they can talk to her and help her if she couldn't go anywhere? No. But the solution to this problem, or the main focus apparently, was calling the editor and telling them to stop printing.
Or does one think that maybe it's about time that we stop, but no one would have private conversations with the editors saying enough?
The reason why Meghan was so upset was that she was exposed for being a liar and being a terrible person. And to use the excuse of wanting to take your own life because you can't get the editor to stop telling the truth, I think is sick. And it's examples like this that hurt the people who are really suffering, because this makes people not want to come forward and admit that they have real problems, not these fake problems that are being brought up and being used to manipulate not only the family, but also the rest of the public. I think it's disgusting. And Harry directly attacks his brother William for being the reason for why all the truth was coming out.
And to see my brother's office copy the very same thing that we promised the two of us would never ever do, that was heartbreaking.
So he just blamed his brother essentially for these attacks in the media of Meghan, which, knowing the backstory of how Meghan was bullying staff and William stepped in to, really just kind of find out what was going on, and seeing how bad this woman was to the people that were working for her. Yeah, I think there's definitely a vendetta out against him, because from the word go, William was like, take your time and get to know this girl, because he saw all of what Meghan is right now. This would have been somewhat respectable if at least maybe Harry showed a little bit of humility and apologized for just one thing that they lied about. But this whole entire thing was doubling down and reinforcing all the lies that they have told. And it just makes them look worse. The most sad part about it is that they bring in their actor friends like Abigail Spencer. What's really strange is Abigail discloses that she's under some sort of NDA, which leads me to believe that her coming forward now to talk is that Meghan has probably paid her, one, to say the things that she needs her to say, and two, this is going on her IMDb profile, as well as she can put this on her audition sheet that she participated in this documentary. It's for clout. She appears just as shallow and fake as the rest of them out in Hollywood.
Anything about or how to help or what to do, and I'm not allowed to say anything. Like, I was not allowed to say anything.
Abby came to me and said we should do something.
I called one of my closest friends, who just so happened at the time to be the editor of People magazine.
These people in Hollywood, man, they are ruthless. Wow, they're actually helping her cover this lie up. If someone can send this video to Samantha, she needs to see this, because I think it will be helpful in her court case. So this is episode 4, and they introduce Abigail being the one contacting the People editor to do this article. And this was done out of love, okay?
I said, we have to turn this narrative around. It will just be her closest friends coming together to talk about the person who she really is in the middle of this.
They don't talk about the article in episode 4. They just are showing that she has all these wonderful friends who are there to support her because she's such a kind and loving, caring person. The sneaky thing that they did with this was that they cut this particular situation up into various sections, and they scattered it all over the 3 episodes that were remaining. By episode 6, you're so distracted by all the pain and abuse that Meghan has taken, they gloss over what really happened here with this article. And I catch Abigail in a lie. So now I'm going to go out of order to put this back into order for this to logically make sense for everyone, because there's a lot of smoke and mirrors going on.
It was this People story that referenced Thomas Merkel's letter and prompted him to share it with the Mail on Sunday.
So notice the manipulation here. They draw your attention to the highlighted piece where it says she wrote him a letter. They don't highlight the full thing that gives the impression that Meghan gave this letter out. And then they switch quickly to Abigail.
For good, and they find one piece, and then it becomes this whole other thing.
If they were trying not to fool people, they would have highlighted instead the quoted sentence, which said, "Dad, I'm so heartbroken. I love you. I have one father. Please stop victimizing me through the media so we can repair our relationship." Now that was in the letter. Now they want your eyes fixated on she wrote him a letter and assume that that was all that was written about this letter and why it was taken out of context. But that's a lie. But Meghan doesn't want you thinking about it, so they quickly switch over to Abigail now telling this story, which is where I believe somebody is telling a lie.
I'm driving up just like, all right, we're going to unpack, we're going to get settled. And Meg is standing outside waiting for me. And I can tell something's off because here's our new home. But she's standing and she's like, I'm having a lot of pain.
Just to confirm, this is the month of July when they moved.
She was holding Archie and she just fell to the ground. And
the first morning that we woke up in our new home is when I miscarried.
The way that I interpret it, and assuming this is the way everybody else is interpreting it, is that that morning she miscarried. Abigail was there. They were supposed to unpack, and this is what happened. Okay. So here is where we're trying to figure out, is Abigail lying or is Meghan lying about the entire miscarriage? I think it's the latter, but you guys decide. Anyhow, they quickly show Meghan typing or somebody typing. This was the article that she wrote for the New York Times, The Losses We Share. Now, if you were reading and following along with that cursor, then congratulations. They succeeded in doing what they needed to do. They didn't want you to read the rest of it. Once again, they manipulated the audience. So at this time, when they're talking about her writing this article, and everyone is talking about how brave she was to talk about it, and just right before that, Harry put the blame on the Daily Mail for putting so much stress on his wife that they were the ones that caused this miscarriage. And at this point, you forget about her friend Abigail. Shall we go down memory lane and read what the brave Duchess wrote? I'll just give you the first 2 paragraphs. It was a July morning that began as ordinarily as any other day. Make breakfast, feed the dogs, take vitamins, find that missing sock, pick up the rogue crayon that rolled under the table, throw my hair in a ponytail before getting my son from his crib. After changing his diaper, I felt a sharp cramp. I dropped to the floor with him in my arms, humming a lullaby to keep us both calm. The cheerful tune, a stark contrast to my sense that something was not right. I knew as I clutched my firstborn child that I was losing my second. Putting aside that the rest of this article was bullshit, I thought Abigail was the one that saw you clutch your stomach with Archie and drop to the floor. Did I hear that right?
Because here's our new home, but she's standing and she's like, I'm having a lot of pain.
Wait a minute. I thought she was finding crayons that rolled under the table and picking up that sock.
She was holding Archie and she just fell to the ground. And
so you watched her drop to the floor singing a lullaby, holding her first child as she was losing her second? I wonder how much they paid her for this Oscar-worthy performance. Please. I'm going to stop right there because I think this is a lot of information for you guys today. As you can see, there's so many manipulations and deceptive tactics that they have been using throughout this series to really try and get you to see them in a different light. But really the facts are the facts. So these reviews are taking a little longer, but I want to make sure that I'm doing a thorough job here because they really are lying through their teeth. And if you have the receipts, you need to put them up, and I want them up. So anyway, I will be back soon with another review video, but until then, turn on your notification bell buttons. Thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.
I was such a fraud.